My image is upside down. Come on, turn. There we go. Oh, we got people here. Hi, Chris. Hi, Laura. Hi, Kathy. So we're just getting ourselves situated here. I just got home from my art journaling class, and feeling a little weird. I don't know if it was because I hadn't had anything to eat until about now, or because we were dealing with solvent inks today in the art journal class, and maybe it got a little high. I'm not sure which. The class went fine, Laura, except as I was saying, we were trying to do transfers with jelly plates. And we have tried this before with mixed results, and the Jelly Arts people had just come out with a new method for doing it using StazOn ink, which is a solvent ink, so there are fumes involved. And we still had hit and miss through it all. So then we were playing around with alcohol inks on it too. And actually, we're probably mixing chemicals together that we probably shouldn't have been mixing together. So we were all getting a little bit high in the class. At least that's our story, and we're sticking to it. So we really aren't any better at getting transfers on jelly plates than we were before. We got a few decent ones, but it's more of a hit and miss kind of a thing, I think. You just have to play around. Laura says, I'm not great with jelly plates. But everybody had a good time with it, because, you know, when you get going with jelly plates, no matter what you're doing, it's just kind of a thing that gets you addicted. Again, that could be the chemicals. I don't know. Yeah, so what's happening today? So if I sound a little like out of it, it's because my head's still feeling a little weird. I don't know what it is. And of course, I'm surprised you didn't just say, "Oh, it's the way you are all the time."
Mm-hmm. I was thinking that.
Oh yeah, well I knew you were thinking it. So I'm dropping cheese on my thing. Oh, hi Anita. So, my mother. I don't know.
She hasn't picked up, right?
No. I haven't talked to her since we were over there on Tuesday. I phoned her today. She didn't pick up. This is pretty much typical and becoming pretty much the habit. So when we were over there on Tuesday, she was fine.
No, she was a little bit more with it than she normally was.
Yeah, well, you have this theory,
But
which I still like. You think that she's got like early signs of dementia and stuff. I don't think she does.
well, I don't know.
I think she's just got old signs of bitch. I don't know. But anyway, she's okay. So the art journal class, was good. We were down about 3 people today. One person I knew was not coming because she was on vacation somewhere warm. Although she sent a message to one of her friends that's in the class saying something about she was having a problem with soccer moms on a beach. So I don't know what that involved, but she had to move or something. So I'm not sure. Maybe they're like what they call that show with the housewives of whatever or something. I don't know. And one of our members, she wasn't feeling well today. So she texted us to say she wasn't going to come because she didn't want to, take a chance if she was getting something, giving it to anybody else. I don't think it had anything to do with the latest virus that's going around. Did you know, speaking of the latest virus, that some YouTube channel people that talk, like especially cruise ones that, review different cruises and talk about cruising life, they won't use the C word for the virus because apparently they get demonetized if they talk about it too much, because YouTube said that their advertisers don't want to advertise on channels that are talking about the virus. So I don't know. I haven't seen any effect on my channel, but then again, I'm not big enough to see any effect. So uh, it just seems kind of a little bit weird with that kind of thing.
Maybe it's travel things that they want.
Mm. Well, that could be. Maybe it is. But anyways, so yeah, then the third person that wasn't there, she just had some surgery, and it was hit or miss whether she'd be at the class or not. We kind of figured she wouldn't because she just had the surgery, I think, earlier this week. She did tell me what kind of surgery it was. It wasn't major surgery, but then again, it wasn't that minor either. I think it had something to do with her stomach or something like that, or possibly her bowels. I don't know. But anyways, actually, in some ways, it worked out pretty good because we had more room to work. It's when you're doing jelly plate printing, things pile up really quick. But anyways, I think everybody had a good time and are still probably high from the chemicals. It's kind of ironic too because we have one person in the group. She is a chemical engineer. She was the one who was talking about mixing this with that and trying that. So, I don't know. What else has been happening? I don't know if any of you saw my video, Stephen Cooks, or not. Walter made Dutch pancakes last weekend. And they were really good. Now, what makes Dutch pancakes Dutch, besides the fact that someone with a Dutch background made them? Hello?
It really does. It's basically just milk and flour and eggs and a little bit of oil and a little bit of salt and some vanilla. And it doesn't have any rising agents or whatever in it, so that it doesn't. Your pancakes end up being really dense. They're not fluffy like American or Canadian pancakes, and they don't tend to absorb syrup. Syrup sort of sits on top of them rather than.
Well, yeah, but we also put butter and brown sugar.
Yeah, well, my mother always had. My mother never had syrup in the house, so she always had brown. We had brown sugar and butter on it. She had Dutch syrup. Sometimes it's made out of beets, which.
Yeah, actually, if it sounds a little weird to you with the brown sugar and the butter, well, it sounds a little weird to me too, but actually it's quite delicious. And I said to Walter, well, these pancakes would make interesting like a dessert. You could, put apples and cinnamon inside them, roll them up.
Yeah, well, people do that.
Yeah, well, they're quite good. They have a little, they're thicker, but it's hard to describe them because basically the ingredients are the same as regular pancakes without the rising agent.
They're more dense.
Mm-hmm.
They're not as fluffy.
So I thought, well, if you left out the sugar, you make them sort of savory. You could do what I do with crepes a lot, and put ham and cheese in them and make a sauce, and that kind of thing as a main course meal. So that's what I was making the other day. And I didn't have his recipe because, of course, it's in what he calls his office, which is the Black Hole at Calcutta, to find anything in there. So I just went online and downloaded a recipe for it. And I got it from the Food Network, figuring, okay, it's the Food Network. So I followed their recipe. Well, the darn things did not set properly, and that's why that video that I was making, I didn't intend it to be funny, but it turned out quite funny because I had nothing but disaster. So to prove the point, though, that I can make crepes, after the disaster with those, I went and mixed up my crepe batter that I usually use and got out my crepe pan, and I made perfect crepes because I've made them many times before and did that. But
well, mine were fine. His disintegrated, but his crepes are okay. So,
yeah. Hi, Carol. But then we discovered that the recipe was probably not right. It called for more milk and less flour than what the one you had.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm blaming it on the recipe.
Yeah, well, actually, that Food Network one, I looked at it originally before I took the one that I took.
Yeah.
'Cause I look at the ingredients and stuff. Um, that Food Network one has really low ratings on it. A
Oh.
lot of people were complaining about that one.
I never bothered to look at the ratings on it. I just, okay, it's the Food Network, big deal. Well, live and learn. So, anyways, I debated whether I'd post it or not. Originally, I was going to put it in my vlog, my weekly vlog, and but it ran a little longer than I wanted for that, so I made it a bonus video because I thought at least some people would get a laugh out of it, and they did.
It probably has a mistake in it. That's probably what it is.
Yeah, well, maybe. Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. It's a mistake. It isn't that I couldn't do it. Yeah. Carol says, how did they taste? The ones I made didn't. Well, actually,
you didn't really eat the ones that you
No.
flubbed, right? So,
but the ones Walter made tasted great. I mean, they're pretty simple.
and the crepes he made were good,
Hmm.
but that's your usual recipe.
That's my usual recipe for making crepes, which are thinner than these pancakes that the Dutch ones. No, thanks, Laura. Laura said it was a wonderful video. And then someone suggested, I forget who it was, left a comment, said, you should do a Stephen Cooks video more often, or when Stephen and Walter cook. Yeah, that reminds me of that one that someone recommended a long time ago. I don't watch it much. John and something cook. There are a couple of guys in the UK, and they make some really weird things on their videos. Oh, sorry, Anita. Anita says, making me hungry for pancakes. Yeah, I love pancakes. I guess when was Shrove Tuesday? Was that last week or the week before?
Well, maybe that's where I got pancakes in my head. All of a sudden, I got pancakes in my head, and I sort of remembered the ones my mother used to make, and they were different than the packaged. The packaged mixes and stuff like that
Yeah.
that you get here. They came out. I remember they came out different. So I thought, well, I'll look on the internet for a recipe, and sure enough, there was one. So.
But we went to the Dutch bakery, and you bought a box.
Oh yeah, I did, but I haven't used it yet.
But it's
Actually,
got
you could have
buckwheat.
used it.
Oh, well,
Actually, the traditional one has buckwheat in it, but my mother just used flour because buckwheat flour is hard to get. So. Shrove Tuesday is past
Yeah.
Tuesday.
that's what I thought. And traditionally, they used to call that Pancake Tuesday or something. I remember as a kid. And Catherine says sugar in the batter contributes to browning. Well, the reason I didn't put the sugar in is because I was making them savory. And I didn't think the sugar would be as great with ham and cheese. I don't know. Might have been okay. Because my crepes, they don't take... my crepe recipe doesn't take... I don't think I put any sugar in it. No.
Actually, I put vanilla sugar in it.
Oh.
That's a Dutch thing too.
Yeah. Although that might taste okay with ham and cheese. Because... people
You
eat
made
cheesecake.
you made crepes before that were a little sweet, and I thought it tasted funny with ham and cheese.
Oh, fine. Well, I don't know why I made those because the ones we had the other day, those were the usual recipe I
Yeah.
used, but I don't think there's any
No, I
sugar
think
in
the
it.
original one you had a recipe that had sugar in it.
Oh, might have been, yeah. So, well, I think, yeah, there's one crepe recipe takes sugar if you're making crepe Suzette or something
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
got fruit and stuff in it.
Yeah, because you've made crepes Suzette
Yeah.
before.
Oh, suddenly I want crepe Suzette. I should have made crepe Suzette. Have to have Grand Marnier though,
We
or
have
Cointreau. Cointreau
I
actually.
think we have Grand Marnier.
Hmm.
I don't think we have Cointreau.
Hmm.
We have an orange liqueur.
Yeah, well, it just has to be an orange liqueur. Okay, so anyways, that was my foray into showing and cooking. I did cook this weekend. Walter had a embroidery class on Saturday afternoon. So I decided, okay, well, I'll make dinner. So I made chicken tetrazzini, which is also a favorite dish of mine that usually never fails. And I cheat. The very first time I ever made chicken tetrazzini, I made it right completely from scratch, meaning you have to make a roux and then the sauce with the roux and everything. And it's actually, you have to boil your chicken breasts and then let them cool, and then cut them into pieces. And it takes
Go get my owl.
get your get your owl, and all that kind of stuff. But I since then have modified the recipe, so now all you need is a can of cream of mushroom soup, a can of cream of chicken soup, some chicken broth. Mix it all together, and I buy the pre-cooked chicken strips and cube those all up, throw them in the sauce, add a few mushrooms into it and whatnot, and bang, you've got chicken tetrazzini. It's easy. And you really can't tell the difference between it and the others.
This is what we did in embroidery class. We made an applique owl.
Oh, look at the Hooters on that.
So, and I didn't go for a traditional brown owl pattern. I chose red.
So Walter learned how to do in the hoop applique. Chris says she loves the owl. Yeah, I like doing in the hoop applique. At first I ever did it, you use duckbill scissors, applique scissors, and you have to cut around it. But actually it's really easy once you've done one. Did you find it easy?
Yeah, it was easy.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of fun. But I'm doing a project right now, I don't know how far I'll get with it because it takes a long time. But I'm actually doing a quilt top, or I don't know if I'll make it into a quilt top. It might be a wall hanging or small throw.
Or was your straw?
What's that? I don't know. I don't remember.
Okay.
Well, you got anything that I shouldn't have?
I don't know.
I don't know. You got Corona. But I'm going to show it tomorrow on my vlog because right now I don't feel like running downstairs and getting this thing. But it's a Dresden block. Dresden is a particular type of design in quilting that it's a very old design, but usually you need special what they call Dresden plates to cut it out. And it's usually an applique because the angles are not something you can make with just your standard block formations. But I found a pattern online for doing it in the hoop with your embroidery machine. And actually it looks quite spectacular, but it takes me for one block 3 hours to make. So I'm going to take it to the retreat with us later this week. We'll talk about that in a minute. And work on it at the retreat along with some other projects. But I just love doing in the hoop stuff. Yeah, Anita says, great job, Walter. Laura says, great looking Hooter. And Kathy says, really, really cute owl. Oh, and he says, oh yes, old pattern of Dresden plate. Yeah, it's an old one. Actually, I've wanted to do a Dresden plate quilt for quite a while because there's something fascinating about it, and it is an old traditional style kind of thing too. And you can give it a bit of a modern twist to it depending on the fabrics you pick. But then I found this embroidery pattern thing, so I thought I'd give it that a try. And actually, I think it looks very elegant. I'm just not sure if I'm actually going to make it into a full-size quilt because of the length of time it takes to do each block. And the block's only about 8.5 inches square, so do the math on if you wanted ones that were a decent sized quilt. Do you have any excitement in your class on yesterday?
Excitement.
Well, like stupid people.
Oh yeah, there's always stupid people. But
What was the stupidest thing that happened yesterday?
I don't know. I can't remember. There's one lady that always seems to have a lot of trouble with doing. Oh, she had her bobbin in backwards.
Oh, well, that'll screw you
You
up.
would think that during the course of
Hi, Cindy.
the classes,
Yeah.
Shirley went to great lengths to tell people how to put their bobbins in, but she had it backwards. That's the lady that had the sewing machine for years and years and years.
Oh, and
Never used it.
Mhm.
And then when she went to try and use it, it was all seized up, and so she had to get it serviced, and just started using it now. And she still hasn't quite grasped the concept.
Laura says, God bless stupid people. It makes the rest of us feel better. Yeah, I always say you need to surround yourself with people who are stupider than you, fatter than you, and poorer than you. and oh no, and not as good and uglier than you, and
You-
that way you'll always be the star.
Even the lady that is somewhat computer illiterate was grasping how to,
Oh,
how
yeah?
to do stuff. Yeah, and she even said that she bought a new computer. So
Oh, well, there's hope on the horizon. Chris says the WHO has asked social media companies to be proactive and professional, stop any false or possible hysterical information about this C virus, and ask that they remove or stop false reporting. Well, that's not a bad thing because there's an awful lot. You don't know what's right and what's wrong. You don't know who's telling you the truth and who's not. There's a lot of misinformation out there, I'm sure, about it. So I can see that. But then again, doesn't that borderline on a form of censorship? So I don't know. Does anybody know? So, anyways, we're not going to talk much about the COVID because everybody else has talked about it too, and we don't know any more about it than anybody else does. So, and that just brings you down to, I put here under what's newsworthy this week is, whose reports do you believe then? Since Chris, you mentioned what you just mentioned. I mean, who do you believe? Where do you get the information from? Because I don't even trust the WHO. Okay, the World Health Organization is basically controlled or influenced by big corporations. Everything is. Governments are, advertising is, they are as well. And, you know, they keep saying, well, they don't want to claim that it's a pandemic because they don't want people to go into panic. Okay, that's true enough. On the other hand, what are they telling us? What are they really doing? And you don't really know. We watch the things about it on YouTube by the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Well, they're no more reliable than anything else either. So we don't know.
not only that, are all the countries reporting accurately their cases and stuff like that? Like for instance, Iran
Yeah.
has all these cases, but they're not. I pretty much figure they're not reporting the cases that actually happened because we've got an awful lot of. We've suddenly got a bunch of cases in Ontario that are people that have come back from Iran.
Yeah, that's true. Anita says the WHO and the CDC have done a crap job. I think they have too. But at the same time, they're also telling everybody, don't panic. You know, most of the world, at least anything that isn't considered a third world country, they're in good state for controlling this and everything. Our own Minister of Health is saying Canada is the best prepared of all countries in the world because we went through SARS and they learned from that. And
Yeah,
but
they only have like about 20 hospital beds in Toronto that are designed to handle.
Yeah, I know.
So what happens if you get more than 20 people that are sick?
Well, what they do right now when there's more than 20 people sick, put them out in the hallway to rot in our system. Oh, Jules, thank you. Jules says, have you lost weight? You look much thinner in your last Idiot Quilter episode. Thank you for noticing. Yes, I'm almost my skinny little 20-year-old self. Not. I have, though. I have lost a little weight. I haven't lost a lot. Actually, I weighed myself the other day, and I think I'm down from when I first started this by about 8 pounds. But it's a long, slow process because we're still doing that IT diet or IF diet, intermittent fasting, IF diet. Walter's gotten skinnier too. Yes. He's not expecting twins anymore. Only one big
I
fat
haven't weighed
baby.
myself lately, so I think I'm back up.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
You weigh more than me?
I don't know how much do I.
I don't know. How much you weigh?
I think I'm at about 180.
Oh, you weigh more than me. The other day when I got on the scales, I was a hard 178. So, this is good for you, Stephen. Walter's lost weight too. Yep. Anita says, I guess because I'm a nurse and therefore I can detect the BS pretty fast. Yep. That's what I mean. And so we're committed now for this river cruise that we're supposed to go on the tail end of May. We've paid our money, and right now, I'm figuring we were going to lose about $19,000. because I don't know. I don't think this thing's going to be over by then. Well, there's no way it can be over by then. No, they've made some progress on some, not cures, but things that can help with it, so they claim. But again, how do we know? How do we know? Oh, thanks, Chris. Chris says you're both looking very good. Well, that's nice. Does that mean we were looking pretty bad before? Huh? Never mind. So, anyways, yeah. What else? Okay. We talked about this a few weeks ago. We talked about the monarchy in Canada and how we feel about it. And I mentioned the fact that, Harry and Meghan have taken up residence for part of the year in BC, and all that kind of stuff, and that we shouldn't have to pay for their security bill. And the government said, oh, yeah, well, we're not paying for their security bill. Guess what? They are. They've been paying their security bill, but that's supposed to end as of March the 31st. But they're in negotiations with the UK and with Buckingham Palace right now about that. What negotiations? You come and you choose to live in our country, then look after your own darn security.
And it's not like they're poor.
And they just said that so far it has cost, since they made the move over here, $39 million for their security. $39 million. That's money that could be going to, the homeless, all the different things in our country that we could use it for, put it into our healthcare system or whatever. Of course, that's federal, our healthcare is provincial, but whatever, you get the point. So, no, I think the Canadian government should be handing Meghan and Harry a bill for that amount. Like, you want to live here in our country, then you have to pay. Like, come on, really. It's ridiculous.
Laura, I don't know what we're going to do.
If it's not up by May, will you cancel your cruise? Here's our problem. If we cancel the cruise, even though we have cancellation insurance, the cancellation insurance may not honor that because...
They don't cancel. No, they don't cover that. They cover it if you're sick or if your parent dies or something like that. But we don't have a cancellation policy which would cover other things.
So I may just have to.
If we canceled it right today, we'd lose 30%. If we cancel it within 60 days or 30 days of the cruise, or between 30 and 60 days of cruise, we lose 50%. And but if it's within the 30 days of us going on the cruise, then we'll lose all of it. So,
yeah. So we decided we had to pay everything up front a week or so ago, and so we did, and we're going to take our chances and see. Now the other thing too, we might be able to if the virus thing is affecting the countries we're going to in such a way, we might be able to defer it, with some sort of a penalty.
It depends on what the cruise line is willing to do. So, if the cruise line cancels it, then they have to give us the money back.
Well, yeah. So we're just keeping our fingers crossed. The problem is this. Right now, we still don't know much about this, from back to our discussion just a moment ago about whose reports are most reliable. And I could see if we had decided, to cancel it before we made all the final payments on the whole thing. Well, first of all, we would lose our deposit.
The cruise is leaving Amsterdam, going to Germany, and to Austria, and to Hungary.
Yeah. So.
Right now, there's a outbreak in Germany, so.
Yeah, well, and we'll be going through Germany. So who knows? But then again, this is the whole panic thing as well. So I don't know. We're just going to.
If the cruise line, it's going through all these different countries as well. If the countries decide to close their borders and say you can't cruise through our area, then it's the cruise line would have to cancel, right?
Yeah. So we'll just have to take it as it comes and hope for the best, I guess. What are people saying here? Disgusting. Oh, wait. Chris says UK will not pay. Meghan and Harry will have to pay their own way eventually. Yeah. discussing the royals are moochers. Yep. Um, Chris says, "Do you have a relative you can knock off?" Yes. Let's go back to my discussion about my mother. Actually, there's a lot of advantages to knocking her off, but no, don't even go there. Um, let's see. Yeah, Chris says cruise companies will be the last to cancel as they want to keep the money. Yes, that's true.
Well, they are a business, so.
Yeah. Um, Laura says she's done the Danube cruise and it's beautiful. Yeah, well, we'll see. We're not going to be on the Danube, though, are we?
Part
Or are
of
we?
it is.
Oh, is it part of it on it?
Yeah.
I don't know. He books all the things. I just go along for the ride. So I don't know what we'll do. We're seeing. Yeah. So back to the Royals thing. I think it just goes to prove too that the Royals live in a very unrealistic world. Like Meghan and Harry think, oh, it's a great idea. We're going to give up our royal duties because we want to have a quieter life. We don't want the paparazzi bugging us all the time. You know, we just want to blend in. Okay, sorry, you can't blend in. You are royalty. So,
They're like
what?
They're like a star. They're
Yeah,
like
they're celebrities
celebrities.
out of it all. But I mean, what was it? The government said that it is protocol to supply security for visiting celebrities. They use the word for, ones that need protection, like heads of state, diplomats, things like that. Yes, it is. But those people aren't living here. They're coming over to do whatever they have to do and then going back to wherever they came from. These guys are going to live part of the year here and part of the year in the UK. Well, let's have the best of both worlds and let's let the UK government pay and the Canadian people pay. No, we're not a colony anymore. We don't belong to the UK. We are a separate sovereign country from the UK. Sure, we have ties historically, but that doesn't make us obligated to do anything for the royal family. Let them pay. So Laura says, and Meghan isn't the type to ditch celebrity. In my opinion, she wants it. Yeah, well, that's why they're coming back here. I mean, they're making the pretense that they're coming back to escape the paparazzi, but she has a production company and she wants to get back into television or movies and stuff because that's her career and the whole bit. So, and Harry, well, he has no chance of ever coming to the throne to start with because there's way too many ahead of him before that would happen. And he's a bit like his uncle Andrew. We talked about this before, Randy Andy there. He's got sort of a rebellious side to him as well. Hopefully not as disgusting as Andrew is. But, they do their own thing. So good. And more power to them. They want to do their own thing. I have no problem with that. Just don't make your thing something I have to pay for through my taxes. Because that's not my thing. Maybe Harry will get into movies. Yeah, maybe. Who knows? Well, he's been in enough things on TV just as Harry. I mean, remember back the Las Vegas episode or something way back? How many years ago was that? And he was all in the tabloids and the whole bit, half naked or something, doing whatever. I don't know. Whatever. Tough life. And Kathy says, I don't really think that marriage will last. No, and geez, funny you should bring that up. Nice segue into this week's topic. Now, to be honest, I didn't know what to pick for a topic this week. So I went through a list of possible topics, and one of them was marriage. Is it obsolete? And I thought, well, that might be interesting to talk about because we just got through all of the, the celebrity things on TV, with the Academy Awards and the Grammys and all that kind of stuff. And you always see them on the red carpet with it, whatever main squeeze it is of the week. And then you hear who's Mel's here. I have a question for Mel. We'll come back to that. They're this week they're with this person, next week with that person, the whole bit, and people seem to follow that. So celebrity marriages seem to break up on a regular basis. But it's just not celebrity marriages that break up. There's lots of people who it seems very popular now to move in with somebody for a few years, have a kid or two with them, and then decide to get married.
I think that's always been like that for a while.
Well,
Long
maybe
time,
it has, but now it's more obvious. I guess
uh,
because people aren't so, it's not so taboo, I suppose. But really, it brings up the question, why is there the institution of marriage and do we really need it? If that's the way people are going to choose their life. And more people, I think, are choosing it that way. I mean, we're married, so.
I think there was a big kick gay marriage when it
Oh,
first
yeah.
came out, but then I think a lot of the younger people aren't willing to make that commitment. So
No, I think the novelty has worn off, at least in the LGBTQ community. The whole marriage idea. It was a novelty because, as we've said before, we've talked about this, so we don't need to belabor it, but we never thought about getting married because we couldn't get married. And then this came along and we could. And we got married just simply to seal the deal on certain legalities.
yeah, like it's still a little bit more secure if if one of us passes away, that the other one gets property and stuff like that. So whereas if you were living common law, although we have common laws here in Canada, it's still a gray area as to how
Yeah.
property is split and stuff like that.
So, but I was thinking of different things that go along with if what is the purpose of marriage? Really? I mean, the Catholic Church and other religion or religious sects too put marriage in as being this sacred ceremony, and it's meant to, for the procreation of children. You can procreate without getting married, apparently. Lots of people do. So I think that's out of the window. The other thing too is marriage at one point in history, like 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 years ago or more, was to bind two families together for prosperity. The idea was, you've got 500 acres of prime land. I've got 1,000 head of cattle, great beef cattle. If our two families were united, think of the more money we could make. And so somebody had a daughter, someone had a son, and said, let's make this an arranged marriage and marry and unite the two families. And I mean, that's how marriage was done, especially amongst the nobility, for centuries and centuries. People didn't marry for love, the concept of love. They didn't marry for love. They married for economic and political ties and things like that. So actually, love for a marriage is kind of a 19th, 20th century concept. And there's still cultures in the world today that love has nothing to do with a marriage. It all has to do with arrangements that are made. You hear all times about arranged marriages in certain cultures. And maybe over time, people get to the point where they, respect the other person. And I suppose that's a form of love when you're with them. And I think that's what happens to a lot of modern marriages too. People have this idea, it's all this hearts and flowers and romance, and then they fall in love. And then after a few years of marriage, well, they have fallen out of love, and that's what then they get a divorce because they have found somebody else. Well, and divorce is too easy, really. I mean, there's nothing keeping people working at their relationship.
Well, is it really good to be be in the old days when it was harder to get a divorce?
Yeah.
And people are just miserable.
Yeah, well, that's true enough too. Unless you're Henry VIII and you just chopped off their head and moved on to the next one. But Aunt B's crazy. Oh, hi, Aunt B. My husband and I will be celebrating 35 years of marriage on May the 11th. My son is having trouble finding a person that's willing to commit to a life together. Yeah, well, there's that too. And congratulations on 35 years. And you know what they say, the first 50 are the hardest. And by the way, we're going on 37 years together. This will be this year's our 15th wedding anniversary. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Laura says, I think I'm one of your younger viewers, subscribers, and I believe highly in legal marriage for Walter's reasons. I don't believe in the sanctimony of marriage. Yeah. And I think more and more younger people are, well, I think it's combined up with like the sanctity of marriage is more of a religious concept, I think. And so depending on what kind of religious background you come from and how you practice religion, I think that has a bearing on how you feel about marriage. I mean, you get some people who are sort of traditional people in the Catholic faith, for example, like marriage is like important. Uh, Whereas people who maybe don't have a organized religion in their background probably don't see it quite the same way as that. They may see it more as an economic move.
I actually have known people that have lived together for years and years and years, had kids together, and suddenly they decided to get married, and then next thing you know, you hear they got divorced.
Well, maybe that has to do with the fact, what is it? If there's something you can't have, you want it even more. So freedom, the sense of freedom. Like when you're not married to somebody, although you're probably committed to them on a certain level, in the back of your head, you can always say, if this gets to a point where I'm really not happy anymore in this or whatever, I can just leave.
Well, that's true and not true, because here
Well,
we
with
have common law, right?
Yeah, common law, they can.
As soon as you actually, it used to be if you had to live together for 2 years before you had common law. I think now it's only a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a little bit more difficult to prove in court. If it's probably a little easier if it's a man and a woman, but if you're two same sex, it's a little bit harder to argue it in court as to when you split up.
Well, I know something. I have not seen or heard anything about gay or lesbian divorce.
I have.
You have?
Yeah, there's people that have been divorced.
No. Well, I mean, not that they can't do it, but what I mean is, I wonder if in some cases those people remain married, but they go their separate ways.
Yeah, like I don't know whatever happened to Jeff and John.
Yeah, that's true. We have a couple of friends that were married after we were married, and they'd been together for a long, long time too, and then they separated. One lives in a different city than the other. I don't know what kind of relationship they still have. We don't even know if they're actually legally divorced or what went on with
I'll have
that.
to ask maybe Jeff sometime.
Yeah. So I don't know how that works. Laura says, sanctimony is religious, yes, but I want to make sure I leave my husband the assets so he has a place to live. But the majority of our friends are common law. We do not understand why. Fear of commitment? Maybe that's the thing. I mean, you go and you get a piece of paper that says you're legally, by law, you're married and all that. If you go through a religious like ceremony for it, it sort of maybe makes you think twice. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know the concept. Mel says, I think marriage is still needed only because you cannot take care of some legal things without it, but mostly it's just useless and outlived institution. Yeah, I think pretty much the same way. I wouldn't have thought that maybe 10 years ago, because I still had some traditional beliefs about it.
Like when my dad passed away, I did all the legal things for my mom, and so some things happened easier because you were married. Like the transfer of the deed to the house was sort of automatically went to your spouse, a married spouse, right? But if you were common law, I don't think that transfer is automatic. You'd still have to go through some legal system to get it, right? And I think that's where marriage makes it a little easier.
Yeah, that could be too. So Laura says, fear of commitment might be the case, but seems weak to me. Well, yeah, if you can't commit to that, what else can't you commit to? And there seems to be a lot of people, and I think this is the younger generation, do this. Accountability and commitment. I don't see it in the younger generation like you would see it in our generation, for example.
Like for instance, people in our generation tended to not move jobs as often as people in the younger generations. I mean, now, mind you, companies don't commit to their employees as much as they used to either. So,
yeah. He says, Scott and I looked at our marriage license as a partnership contract that we both agreed to work together throughout life to benefit each other. Yeah. Okay. I can see that. Um, yeah. So in a sense, then it becomes a business transaction. So maybe it's not so much that marriage is obsolete as much as the concept of marriage, the whole idea you fall in love with somebody, romance, hearts, and all that kind of stuff. And maybe it's going back to the Middle Ages again, where basically it's a contractual obligation, bringing two parties together for a common benefit. I don't know, because that's what marriage was. In the Middle Ages and, well, right up into the Victorian era for that matter. And in some countries, as I said before, it is still that way. So maybe
So
that's it.
doesn't some people look at a common law relationship as not a real relationship?
Well, yes, because there's no commitment. They're equating that as not being a commitment, but there is a commitment. I mean, I think you're making a commitment to somebody when you decide to move in with them, for the most part. Like you're saying, okay, we're not so much dating now as we are now, like we're in a relationship and we're sharing assets. Um, you know, and I think that's a commitment right there. Um, I mean, we knew each other for 4 years before we ever moved in together. And that's because we're both men and we're both independent men. And we didn't want to be beholden to the other for anything. Um, so we couldn't afford to really move in with each other because we lived in separate places until we were able to buy a house together. And I always used to say our first house when we bought that was basically our wedding vows. That was our wedding rings because it would have made life a lot more difficult if we decided to separate because we'd have to separate the assets. And that becomes a legal nightmare. And especially when you're two guys in LGBT, two gay guys, in that day and age, it could have gotten, well, it could get nasty. I don't think it would have got nasty between us, but, well, we've never tested that. I want a divorce.
Fine, go.
And if I was Catholic, I could go, I want my marriage annulled because we never had any children. I don't know. Abby says, we had lived together for a year before we married. His mother about lost her mind. Yeah, there's that old
Yeah, the older
thing.
generation tended to have some people.
Well, you're living in sin.
Issues, especially if there was a religious background.
Well, you're living in sin. Oh, I remember my grandparents talking about it, saying, well, she shacked up with him. That's how my grandmother would put it. She shacked up with him, which also suggested that she was a slut. And the funny thing was, too, it always was the woman's fault on that. So, of course, that was the same thing. Well, they had to get married. She sucked him in. Okay, well, having come from a family like that, because my parents had to get married because I was on the way. So, my sister has an interesting theory. She said people should have a marriage contract for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, you decide if you will renew the contract or end the contract. Yeah, that's kind of interesting idea. But there you go.
But then how many people would renew?
Yeah. Well, what about prenuptials? People have now, well, usually people with lots of money or whatever,
Yeah.
Have these prenuptials, that say, if we decide to split up, then this is what you get, this is what I get, and that's it. This is my stuff, this is your stuff, and all of that kind of stuff. Kind of takes the romance out of it, doesn't it? But then again, as I said, we certainly did not get married for romantic reasons. We basically got married
Because we could.
because we could, and for legality. And I wanted hard to divorce. And you've heard that story. But, yeah, he says, yes, shacked up. Yep. So, I don't know. Well, so speaking of all of this, too. Okay, so if there wasn't, let's say marriage was obsolete, the institution of marriage was obsolete, then there's a whole industry out there in business that would probably start to suffer, and that would be the wedding business, because people spend an arm and a leg on weddings. And I think also that's part of the disillusionment of marriage, because women especially, and gay men to a certain point, some gay men, have this dream of the princess wedding, the nice dress, the wonderful venue, the music. They plan it. Some people plan this thing since the time they're a small child. In fact, in my parents' day, my grandparents' day, in that, they used to have a hope chest. And the idea was you were supposed to learn as a woman, as a young girl, you learned how to embroider and to sew and knit, and you would make tea towels and bedspreads and embroider, bath towels and stuff, and you'd keep them in your hope chest. I did know one person used to call that, she had a hope chest, she called it a hopeless chest because she was never getting married. But my sister had one. My mother started my sister on this kind of thing when she was a teenager. She didn't do too much with it, but my mother had, because the only reason my mother did was because her mother had done it with her. Of course, my mother got married at 16, so.
Yeah, and when your mother went to the weddings, she was always dressed to the nines, and your mother.
Oh yeah. She's mother of the bride,
Yeah.
and then mother of the groom at my brother's. At ours, no, ours was definitely not a traditional wedding in things like that. So, I mean, with weddings costing from $20,000 plus, there's a whole industry that goes out the window, and I think I equate that idea.
Actually, I heard of something recently where some woman was so ticked off that her husband-to-be didn't get her a decent wedding engagement ring that she cut the wedding off because she was ticked off at him.
Okay, well, there you go. You can see why she was getting married. It wasn't really for the right reasons. I'm not sure what the right reasons are for getting married. That goes back to what we were saying before. Mel says she's been with my boyfriend soon 20 years, but we both have our own homes, money, and life. Never need to explain anything, make plans and no arguments. That works very well for us. The wedding industry, Laura says, would adapt and call it commitment ceremonies. We'll find a way to continue profiting. Yeah. Well, you want to know something? Commitment ceremonies aren't anything new, because in the gay world, we had commitment ceremonies way before we had legal marriage.
Yeah, because you couldn't get married.
Because you couldn't get married.
So they had something, so people actually went through something called a commitment ceremony.
But the problem with gay marriage, okay, and this might seem like a gross exaggeration, but we know lots of people in the gay community who get married because it's the idea of getting married. Especially the younger, well, actually, I think the younger gays aren't doing it now as much. But when we first got legal marriage, people were just getting married for the sake of wanting to get married. We know a couple that got married just last fall. And one of them had been married before to a woman, has children, grown-up children, and the whole bit. And then these guys came out. The one guy got rid of his wife.
Well, no, the other guy's partner passed away.
Yeah, but it wasn't a woman.
He'd been gay all the time.
Yeah, but the other guy got rid of his wife.
Yeah.
And for whatever reasons. And then I don't know if they knew each other before that happened or after the fact, but you would have thought that theirs was the wedding of the century, the way they went on and on about it. And it looked a little tacky in the pictures we saw. We weren't invited, so okay, sour grapes. No, not really. They're not that close of friends. They're not even friends, really. They're more acquaintances. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Bonnie says, yeah, it's kind of a choice. Well, we had friends that were a couple that didn't want to get married, and we got married. So
and they didn't want to come to our wedding.
Yeah, he decided not to come to our wedding. And they're no longer friends. So.
And they're no longer friends. Well, they're no longer friends. It's a little more complicated than that. It wasn't like we had a major falling out or anything. They just decided that when we told them, we were going to ask them to be our best men, be our witnesses at our wedding. And before I even got a chance to ask them about that, when they knew we were going to get married, they said, don't send us an invitation because you're getting married on a Friday night and we work. We were getting married at 8 o'clock on a Friday night in the summer.
And they had day jobs. So.
They had day jobs. They were usually home before then. And they weren't the only ones that affected by that. But the reason we had it when we had it like that is we didn't want to screw up anybody's weekend from it. That was it. We were both working too when we got married. I mean, it wasn't like we didn't, well, of course, it was summer, so I was off, but because it was in July. But nevertheless, and that put us right back on that. And that was 15 years ago. And guess what? We haven't seen or heard of them. Well, actually, they have a YouTube channel that they've just put up about traveling that I do watch. But we have not had any contact with them in 15 years. And it was simply that. They just turned us off because we were getting married. Now, they're still together. But I don't know if they ever got married, but I don't think they did. With it. So yeah, it is a choice. Is it common for gay marriages to come from heterosexual marriages? This is probably off topic. Okay, I'm not sure if I understand exactly what you're asking, Laura. Is it common for gay marriages to come from heterosexual marriages?
Oh, you mean, I think she's saying, like when you said the guy was married to a wife. Yeah, that happens a lot.
Yeah? Okay, I see the point.
Okay, we know a lot of people that are that call themselves gay now that were married and had kids, and so
yeah, Laura says yes, that's right. The way we interpreted that. Well, you know the other thing too about gay marriage. I think in the case of some of these people like this who may have been married before a straight marriage, I think they fall right back into the idea of getting into marriage again because they don't want anybody else to get their hands on that person. They want, and I think there's a certain amount of comfort in the legality.
You got to remember, like, well, I mean, we're older now. When we were like in our 20s and stuff like that, I mean, I tried to date women, and Steve tried to date women and everything else, and you had in your mind, or you were brought up with the idea that you got married and you had kids, right? And so there were a lot of people that were gay that maybe the what do you call it? The gay drive was not quite as intense as other people, and they decided to marry for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I mean, just because we're gay doesn't mean you're incapable of having sex with a woman. So
well, that's a topic for another day.
Well, that's a topic for another day.
I don't want to talk about.
That has happened, especially in our generation, probably more than nowadays, I think.
And I also think, too, to move the discussion on to another point that I wrote down, I think there is still a stigma around not being married. And I'm talking about in the straight world, in the heterosexual world, but I think that's also coming into, or may have for a little while come into the gay world as well. I mean, what do the people say about women when they get to a certain age and they're still not married? Oh, she's a lost, or she's an unclaimed treasure. I have several relatives in that ballpark, and that's what we call them. We call them the unclaimed treasure. Or if a woman isn't married by a certain age, then the whole idea is, well, she's never going to have children because, the biological clock is running down and all that kind of stuff. Or they're probably a lesbian. Well, now you can't really use that argument, at least not in our country, because lesbians can get married to each other. So that argument doesn't work. But I think there's still a stigma around the whole idea if you're not married. And in the gay community, too. I mean, I remember a cruise we went on many years ago. It was a gay cruise. I think it was our first one. And we met these two guys from Boston. And they had special little events during the cruise. And so one night where we met these two guys, it was in one of the bars on the ship, and it was for those who were newly married or wished they could be. That's how they put it. So we went to this because we had just been, well, what was it? What year was that? We'd only been married.
That was 2007.
So we'd only been married 2 years at that point. Well, we met these other two guys from Boston. They were married because in Massachusetts, it was legal to get married.
It's one of the first states, yeah.
One of the first states for it. I think even before Canada made it legal.
I don't know, I can't recall.
I can't recall. But anyways, they had just been married too. So we were talking to them about the whole thing. Well, where was I going with this?
I don't know where you're
The
going.
stigma. Oh, there's stigma amongst other people. There were a few people in the bar in there too. They were listening to our conversation. And we were gods because we were married. And they came from the States and from states that they didn't have marriage yet. And they were envious of us that we were married. And a lot of them had stars in their eyes for that because they were looking at marriage as the romantic sort of, oh, you met your prince in shining armor and all this kind of stuff and blah, blah, blah.
Well, I think also in the United States it seemed to be a little bit more important because in the United States the average gay couple didn't have any kind of rights if they were not married. Like if you went to the hospital, I mean, it's different now, I'm sure, but if you went to the hospital and they said only next of kin could come visit you, you weren't necessarily considered next of kin if you were in a common law relationship with your partner.
Yeah.
Right? You had to be married for you to be
Yeah,
allowed
that's
to
right.
go
Yeah.
to that. Whereas in Canada it was different. You were considered common law. So we had a lot more rights here, even if we weren't married. A common law was, recognized for same-sex couples. So there were some legal things, even though it wasn't. It was still a little bit of a gray area if you split up or something like that. If you took it to court, that you could argue that the other person didn't contribute or something like that.
And so Laura says, what made you both decide to marry?
Well, that was a little complicated.
That was complicated because we didn't actually.
I mean, we had lived together for a long time. This is where we were in our second house.
22 years.
Yeah, and so we talked about it for a bit. I mean, what happened was probably a big thing was that suddenly we could get married.
Yeah.
Because suddenly it became legal. Before that, we didn't. We were hanging around with a couple that just recently got married, male and female, and funny thing was before they knew it was legal or illegal in Canada to get married, the one half of the couple asked why we weren't married.
Yeah.
And we said because we can't get married.
Like, where have you been? You living under a rock?
What? Anyway, it was because maybe the people we knew that were married, because the fact you could get married. We had another gay couple friends that I worked with that went and got married when it became legal.
Yeah.
And so I guess that during that period of time,
We didn't want to be left out.
yeah, no, I guess
We had to
we've
keep up
been
with the Joneses.
together for a long time. We never really considered that we would separate in any way, so why not get married?
Well, I know why I wanted to get married.
Plus the idea that it's easier if something happens to one of us that the assets go to the other person.
Yeah, that was for the legal reasons. Now, the real reason I wanted to get married was because I looked around the house and decided it's time to update and I want hardwood floors. And we'd been to all the straight people's weddings and given them fabulous gifts and money and everything over the years. I figured it's payback time. So now we have the opportunity, and although I'm sounding a little facetious when I say this, I actually am being partially truthful here about the reason for it. When we realized that we could now get married, and we had never considered it before, one of the considerations was, and it was resentment, we had been invited to all these bloody straight people's weddings and had done, the gifts and the whole bit, figuring, and when are we ever going to get to be part of that? And now I said, wait, we could be, but we don't need China. We don't need crystal. We don't need silverware. We need a hardwood floor in our house. So we said, that's what we put on the wedding invitation as a gift. And they weren't getting off light. We talked about this. So, well, we could do it like nobody brings gifts. I went, hell no. No, it's the one time in our life when we can have payback here for all of this. So, hell no with that one. And I don't want them buying wedding gifts what they consider a gay couple would want, which would be pretty little dust collectors. No, we don't want dust collectors. Don't need them. Said, gift certificates from Home Depot, we want to put in a hardwood floor. And for the most part, everybody gave us gift certificates from Home Depot to the tune of, when we paid for the hardwood floor, we paid with $4,000 worth of gift certificates, which just about boggled the minds of the people at Home Depot when we handing them out. Because they were in various denominations too. Now, some people did give us, other gifts, more sort of personal gifts and things. Like one friend of ours had made us a small quilt, and I didn't really appreciate it at the time because I wasn't into quilting. I do now. And we did have a few stupid gifts. Like my brother and sister-in-law. First of all, they didn't give us anything for our wedding.
A year.
No. And this may make me sound petty, okay? But you'd have to understand the circumstances with my brother and my sister-in-law. They didn't give us a wedding gift at all. Now, when they got married, we gave them a VCR, and in those days, that was 1989, a VCR was a lot of money in that day, and we gave them money towards their honeymoon or whatever. I think we gave them another $500 or something like that, which at the time was a lot of money that neither one of us could really afford that easily, but we did. And they didn't give us anything for a year. 1 year later, they presented us with an outdoor clock for our patio from HomeSense. $35. Okay. Yeah, I know. It's not the gift, it's the thought that counted. There was no thought in that one. Mind you, I'm still using the clock to this day. And that was 15 years ago. But talk about cheap bastards. Really. My sister and brother-in-law were fine. We had given them a dishwasher for their wedding. They gave us some cash. Well, they gave us gift certificates. Now, my sister said, she says, well, John, my brother-in-law, he wanted to give you more than what we gave you. But she said, but I kind of thought, well, we got the kids, they're going to go to college or whatever. And I thought, yeah, okay. It's better than a clock. All right. Was I tallying up the stuff? Yeah, I was. I have a list. I know exactly what everybody gave us for our wedding. Does that make me sound petty? Yeah, probably does. But you want to know something? Weddings bring out the pettiness in people. So there you go. But we had a great party. It was a great wedding. It was small, only 85 people at it. But it was fun, and that's what we wanted, and that's what we got.
We even had door prizes.
The only damper on the whole, yeah, we had door prizes and all kinds of stuff. We gave out gift certificates for the theater and stuff, or for like the movie theater and things like that for it all, and it was fun, and we wanted it to be that way. And plus, some of our closest friends gave us very personal gifts, like the two guys we were talking about that got married after we got married, but are now like divorced, separated, whatever. They were disc jockeys, and they were excellent disc jockeys. That was their gift to us. They were our disc jockeys for that night. And also, they kind of played the role of like sort of masters of ceremonies in a sense. We did not have speeches or anything much like that. We wanted, get down, and have some fun kind of a deal. One of our friends was a teacher who taught baking, and she was you gotta say it carefully, a master baker. And she designed our wedding cake and made it for us, and that was her gift, and it was a beautiful cake. She had done it on 3 tiers that went out, and
three different flavors,
and checkerboard in it. Like, it was a fantastic cake. Another one of my friends, She was into photography. She did all of our wedding photographs. And she just bought a brand new camera and was using that and everything. And I never want to hurt her feelings because when she sees our wedding pictures, which is not very often because I don't even know where they are right now. Well, I do sort of. She had the best intentions, but she wasn't quite right on the settings on the camera, so I had to put them all through Photoshop and redo them. And when she sees them, she goes, "Oh, I did a really good job, didn't I?" She was about to say, I says, "Yes, you did. Yes, you did." I hope she never watches this. I still appreciate the thought that she put into it and the time and effort.
She was good.
And you know, quite frankly, does anybody ever look at their old wedding albums? No. So that was really nice. Two of close friends of ours became our witnesses for the wedding as well. So it was a party, and that's what we wanted out of it all. So those two guys that had the opportunity to be our best men, well, they'll never know because we never told them, unless they see this. But because they cut us off before I even got a chance to ask. I was just about to when I called them, and then we got told, "Well, don't bother sending us an invitation because we both work." Aha. Okay, whatever. So back to your question about why we got married, that we didn't have a plan. Did we have an engagement? No. Did one of us get down on one knee and ask the other? Oh, that makes me so sick. Oh, that makes me, like, in heterosexual ones, it's sweet and sticky enough. But in gay ones, when one guy, you see them all the time on YouTube, gets down on one knee and asks the other guy, there's so many things wrong with that. When it comes to men. First of all, straight people are always asking us who does the womanly things, who does the men things in the relationship where we don't have roles like that. And by one guy getting down his knee and asking another guy to marry him, the roles have been established in the very traditional sense. Guy on the knee is the man, the little woman's the one standing there going, "Gee, I hope it's a nice diamond." And that's the other thing about wedding rings. In gay marriages too. There are those that hold out for a diamond. Do you see a diamond on this finger? No. Every time his stocks go up, I go, and yet I still don't see a diamond.
Right now they've been going down.
I don't see a diamond on this finger. No, that's a joke. I don't want a diamond. We have a simple wedding band, and that's fine. And that means more to me than anything. Okay? And every time that he can't find his wedding ring, I just about have a conniption fit over it all. Okay, so maybe there is a little bit of femininity in me. I don't know. But really, we just sat at the kitchen table one night and I said, now that it's legal, we could get married. And it just went from there. So that's the best I can give you as an explanation because we're really not sure why we did it, except for the legalities. More than anything.
And somebody asked about healthcare. Actually, healthcare here, there's no issues. Like, I mean, if you're even if you're not married,
Hi, Brenda.
Hospitals understand that there can be committed relationships between same-sex people. So they don't really. If you say nowadays, if you say you're next to kin and you say it's my same-sex partner, then they will assume you are the next of kin. So
yeah. So there's all of that. Laura says yes. Looking after each other, hardwood floors, baby.
And healthcare in this country, though, everybody it's for each person individually. There's no advantage to getting married about healthcare.
No, not here. So, so back to not just, this wasn't about gay marriage. This is just about marriage for everybody. Now, there's another thing I wrote down here when I was brainstorming with myself. There's the whole stigma around not being married, and I especially think a lot of this applies to women, unfortunately, because women need to be married to be empowered. Women are not taken seriously if they don't have a man in their life, and I'm sorry to say that, and I'm not saying it from me, like, I'm not trying to be sexist about it, but unfortunately in our society, it is still sexist. I mean, I heard somebody debating the whole question of Ms., Miss, and Mrs., and they said, I think it was on a YouTube video or somebody was talking about this, and they said, I am neither a Mrs., I am not a Ms., I am not a Miss. My name is such and such. And I know for myself now, if I have to mail something out to somebody or address somebody in an email, a female, I never ever, and there's somebody I don't know. I was raised in the old way that you're polite. You talk to people who are older than you, especially, and they are Mr. or Mrs. or Miss. And then eventually it evolved to Ms. And all that. Now, I would rather just call them by their name or address them by their name. Like, Dear Mary Brown. Or on a letter, on the outside of it, on the envelope, Mary Brown, whoever. If I write anything, like if I send a birthday card to my sister, I put her name. I do not put Mrs. You know how the old days were, where people went by their husband's name with the Mrs.? My mother for years was Mrs. Lyle Bland, my father's name. Then the government said something about for credit and that all their cards had to have they couldn't go by Mrs. Lyle Bland or whatever. They could go by Mrs., but Mrs. Lorna Bland. They had to use their name and the whole bit. But I still think there are people who look at unmarried women as not being as important as married women for some reason. And I'm not sure what that reason is, but I think it's extremely sexist. So that's what I mean. Women, if they want to be empowered, I think I'm hoping that's dying out. I would hope that the younger generation now wouldn't think that way, but that they still, how can't they think that way? Because look at Disney. All these kids are raised on Disney. What's the one thing Disney shows them? They show like The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid lost her voice and she got rid of her body, half her body, in order to get the man, and once she got the man, she got her voice back. Snow White is put into a comatose state. She cannot be awakened until Prince Charming comes along and kisses her. The true kiss of love. Beauty and the Beast. Okay, now that's different. Because actually that's reversal, isn't it? Because he's a beast until he finds his true love, and that breaks the... Yeah, that one's in reverse. But he's a prince, she is not. And she rises to the level of a princess because she marries a prince. So there you go. She does not have any power until she gets the power through the man, her relationship to the man. Oh no, it's okay, Laura. No problem. In Quebec, Bonnie says we maintain our name. Yeah, and more women now in Canada retain their name. I mean, the women I worked with in my department, they keep their names. They keep their last name, their first name. It's how they're referred to.
Actually, I think personally, and nowadays, it started happening more when I first started working, that women would keep their maiden name rather than taking on a married name.
Because that's their business name.
Yeah, and I think actually it's better if a woman keeps her. First of all, it's her heritage, right? If somebody, let's say, got married to me, and their name was an East Indian name, they end up becoming Vandergrond or something like that. Then, which is my Dutch name, they automatically think that person's Dutch. But in actual not, it's her husband that would be Dutch.
Well, I think what's even more important is the fact in the business world that since they are not supposed to ask you an interview about your marital status, if you go in and you refer to yourself as Mrs. Such and Such or something like that, well, instantly they know. And that shouldn't be any part of hiring a woman. So if she retains her name, then don't have that stigma or that prejudice that may come from...
Actually, what's kind of interesting in Holland, as far as I know, it's still this way in Holland, I think, that you took your husband's name on, but when you got married, but your legal name was always still your maiden name.
Yeah. Well, Laura says, I wouldn't agree with single women being less important than married women. I'm not saying they're less important. I am saying that they can be treated as not the same by certain men, especially older generation men. I think, well, first of all, here's one of the reasons why you're not supposed to, at least in this country, when you're interviewing a woman for a job, why you're not supposed to ask her about her marital status, because that creates a prejudice. If what some men may assume is if you are single, then you're probably going to end up getting married, and then you're going to get pregnant and you're going to need time off work and all this kind of stuff. Whereas if you're a married woman, you've probably already started your family, unless you just got married or something like that, and
actually,
you're more stable. And I put that in quotation marks because you do know where the word hysteria comes from, right? Freud treated women with hysteria, and the way they severe cases of hysteria, they went in and they did things. They gave women a hysterectomy for it. That's where those are all tied together with it, because that was supposed to calm them down. Well, we know that that's just absolutely ridiculous and the whole bit. But what I'm saying is, if an older man interviewing a younger woman for a job, if they know about their marital status, they're going to make certain assumptions that are wrong. But nevertheless, they're in a position of power.
And I know here you're not supposed to discriminate on hiring a woman if you think that she might have kids, right? Or stuff. I even know of a case that I recently where I worked that one of the ladies went into an interview and said she had grown-up children, right? And she said in the interview she had grown-up children because she didn't want them to think that she was going to be pregnant and have kids.
That's right.
And they hired her thinking that she had finished her family, and turns out that she had a new husband and she was just starting her family.
Yeah, so joke's on them, eh? But here's something really interesting that someone said here. Just let me see here. Yeah, Bonnie says, we are not less important ever, married or not. That is quite right, Bonnie. But I want to now tell you something about men that you may not have known. Single men are not valued the same as married men in our society. Why is that? Single man, you've all heard the expression, all right? Oh, he's a young man. He's still got time to sow his wild oats, which would suggest you're a Randy Andy kind of a thing out there, that all you're doing is playing in the field and you're not settling down yet and you're not committed to things. But a married man has made a commitment to a woman. If he has children, even better. He's a family man. He's a father. He's not going out sowing any wild oats anymore. He's settled down. He knows about commitment, responsibility, duty, accountability, all that kind of stuff. So it also works against a single man when they go in for a job. I'll give you a more specific example. I've been interviewed many teachers over the years in my capacity as a department head of the department. We had a young guy come into the department at the last school I was at, and he was pretty much fresh out of teachers college, the whole bit. He was single, he traveled a lot, and the whole bit. And we debated whether or not to hire him. And the reason was, and the other person in the interview was another man, my principal. And one of the reasons why they debated whether to hire him was because we didn't know whether we could get a commitment on him, because he's a young guy. He seemed to have wanderlust, and there was nothing holding him down, so he could get up and tomorrow and take a leave of absence or just leave this job and bye. Well, we did hire him, and he turned out to be one of the best teachers in my department. I'm talking about Ron and the whole bit. He is now since then married, but he, this was the prejudice that was there. So it does work with the men's world, but you don't often hear about that. But it does. Maybe not to the same degree as a single woman, but it's still there. There's something about this idea that if you're married, then you are trainable, whether you're male or female. and that you're in control, that you're controllable. You are more of a person that makes a commitment, all that kind of stuff. Well, I don't know. I've known lots of married guys who are screwing around on their wives, and I've known lots of married women who have been screwing around on their husbands too. It works both ways. So marriage, if we go back to the whole idea of it being obsolete, if you get married because you get pressure on society to settle you down and marriage will do it, that's not always true, is it? Maybe it does in some cases, but I don't know. I don't know if it settles anybody down, really. Anita says society views women different. Yes, and it has, and it's not right. However, even in 2020, most companies are owned and run by men. Yes.
Yeah, and most executives in companies are still men.
That's right.
There are female executives, but they're not as prevalent.
And Anita says most laws are made by men. Yes, because there's more men in politics. And that's true. Yep. Like women have we have a long way to go to have complete equality. But, and this goes back to marriage, there are still many, many young females out there who still feel that they are not viable unless there is a man in their life, whether they're married to that man, whether they live with that man in common law, or whether they're dating that man. Now, who's the enemy there? Now, you can say, the women will say, I know you're going to say it, well, that's because it's an old boys network. The men have made women feel that way. Yes, they have. But who's going to make them not feel that way? Women have to fight back. And many of the younger generation are fighting back. But it's going to still take a long time. Women have to see themselves as equals. And I'm sorry, but I sit in a guild of 100 women. And as you know, I'm on the executive. And the thing is, they'll all sit there in that executive meeting and they blah, 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 back and forth about whatever. And finally, until I get to a point where I want to say something, if I say something, they all stop and they listen. Not because I'm saying things that are of great importance, nor are they the best words of wisdom you've ever heard. It's simply because of this. I'm a man. And I'm not afraid to use that power either. And women need to do that as well. Women talk about being empowered, that they need to take control. But I've seen so many examples where they will back down. Yes, men are a problem. Men are bullies to women. Men are in control. Men will turn around and say derogatory things about women who do try to assert power or empower themselves. We know that. But they have to keep fighting. And I'll give you an equation to this. The gay world is a very good example of what you can do if you never say never. We did get legal marriage. We now have been seen as a group in society that matters. For years we didn't. For years we were fighting for the same things that women are fighting for. Now you're going to say, but you were men, so you had an edge. Not really. We weren't seen as men at all. We were seen as, and sorry for this, okay, and what I mean by this, we were seen as lesser than women. On the scale of the hierarchy in society, men, women, gays, lesbians. And then, fish, rocks, amoebas, whatever, and that kind of thing. That's the world we grew up in. That world has changed. Why has it changed? Because we fought for it. So, there are some parallels here. I don't think any of the women on here are going to agree with me on that totally. I understand that. But I'm just saying, you should take a look at that too, as well. course, this is now going away from marriage, and we're starting to talk about equal rights. But let's see what are people saying. Brenda says, yes, unfortunately, I was raised to believe I was going to be married and live in a little house with a white picket fence. Yeah. Laura says, my mother was a teacher. In the early 70s, she was told the hiring hierarchy was single men, married men, and then married women. Married men, single men, married men, married men. Okay, we got to duplicate there. But I know what you're talking about. Yes, that's exactly what the hierarchy was back then. And Laura says, don't think that they would get away with that style of hiring today. No, they don't.
Not officially.
Not officially, but there are ways around it. And I suffered from the same thing. If I had been known as a gay man when I first went for my first teaching job, it wouldn't matter how qualified I was, I wouldn't have gotten the job. In fact, a single woman would have gotten the job over me. But they didn't know because I didn't tell them. And I wasn't going to like kill myself by telling them something like that then. Anita says, I think we will get there, but it's going to take a long while. Yeah? Not here in my area. No, I agree with you, Bonnie. My mom was told this in the 70s when she was pregnant with me. Yes, I can believe it in the 70s, but the younger generation of women will not accept it anymore, thank goodness. Oh, no, that's not true. That is not true. The younger generation of women, okay, I taught them. No, they still come into things with the preconceived idea that they're inferior. Example, girls can't do math. Yes, they can. They do it better than most boys. Why can they do it better than most boys? Because the math that's taught in high schools in grade 9 and grade 10 right now is very complex and it takes a lot of thinking time. Boys at grade 9 and grade 10 don't think with this. We know what they think with. They won't spend the time with it. Girls will, but then girls get this idea that it is not, they won't capture a guy if they're too smart. And math is one of those courses where if you know how to do the math, you must be smart with it. And those girls allow that kind of thinking to creep into their own mindset, and so they don't do well in math, even though they're quite capable of doing well in math. You want to know the reverse of that? Boys in English. It's okay for a girl to be good in English because it's books and things like that. But for the guys, no. You don't want to admit that you like to read books beyond a comic book or graphic novel or stuff about sports personalities because that's not masculine enough. And if you can still get labeled as being gay if you want to read Jane Austen or something like that. So, sexual stereotypes still exist and are still harmful. My mom was seen as some sort of pirate for needing a job. I watched the old movie Tootsie last night. Good look at gender biases and norms. Yeah, okay, it's a hilarious movie, but look at what's going on in that movie. Really, it perpetuates the whole idea that only women can care for. Yeah, he's a guy, but he had to dress as a woman to do what he was doing. Look at Tootsie. Okay, with Dustin Hoffman. Okay, the only way.
What she said, Tootsie.
No, said I thought.
Yeah,
oh, sorry, it is Tootsie. Okay, I was thinking Mrs. Doubtfire. Yeah, that. But yeah, you're right. Tootsie. Look at Tootsie. But in order for him to, I don't know. That one's a little bit more complex because
I can't remember Tootsie.
I'm trying to remember most of the movie, and I'm probably getting things wrong. But in Tootsie, he got ahead by being a woman further than he could get ahead as a man until near the end when he reveals that he's actually a man. So I don't know. I don't know if that's it's a comedy. I don't know. Actually, younger generation women are putting themselves back between fist and stone. Fist and stove. I don't understand the expression, Mel. Sexual orientation should not play a role in hiring. That is blatant discrimination. Yeah, we know it shouldn't, but it does.
It shouldn't, but it does. Actually, there was a guy I used to work with, and he was a senior manager, and he, I pretty much knew he was gay, but he kept it hidden pretty well, and but there was an assumption that he was probably gay, and he was bypassed with several promotions. He's an excellent manager, very good, everything, but he was bypassed with several promotions. He was actually demoted, although he was a better manager than most people. And I'm sure it was because he was gay.
Yeah. So there are a lot of parallels between being...
Because there was another guy that was there. Was less qualified, not a good, he wasn't even a manager, and he was promoted above the other guy that was gay.
Yeah,
it was absolutely devastating for the other guy, but I'm sure it was because he was gay.
The only difference is between the fight for equal rights for women and for gays is simply because as gays we are men. So we do have an advantage unless they find out we're gay. And then again, of course, depending on who's doing the hiring. But, we still had a fight for that. Yeah, Anita, you're right. There's still plenty of discrimination in hiring. But to bring us back to the whole thing about marriage, too, another thing I put down here, isn't marriage just a way to control women? And we've already touched on this when we talk about the whole idea that a woman is not truly a woman until she is married to a man and has children. So she's a wife and a mother. Well, no, that's not true. But still, that hovers in the background, doesn't it, in a lot of cases? And married couples have more power than singles. Okay, you go and try to rent something. Rent an apartment, okay? Or go in for a mortgage for a house. Single people don't qualify as readily as a married couple. Now, you could say, well, that's because a married couple in this day and age, if they're both working, have a better income, right? However, singles aren't seen as being, again, they haven't made that commitment.
Well, actually, I think you're wrong there, because I think a bank will look at a single as it's one income that they have, and it's only that one income, whereas a married couple could split up. And
I suppose. Yeah, I didn't really think about it in that point of view. So yeah, maybe that's true as well. But everything, like when people talk about family values, they're not talking about a single woman raising a child. They're not talking about gay couples. They're talking about the traditional one man, one woman, and little things running all around the house. And that still plays a big role in our society. Maybe more so in some societies than others, but I still think it plays a big role. And it's a prejudice. How about some thumbs up, everyone? I believe marriage is biblical. It's under God's ordinance that they are joined. Actually, biblical marriage was a way to, one, control women, two, to procreate. Look at the Catholic Church as an example, but there are other religions. The Garden of Eden did not exist. We were evolved, okay? So there wasn't a naked man and a naked woman who got kicked out after she bit into the apple and went, oh, I'm naked, and a whole bit, and says, here, Adam, have a bite. Ooh, have some fun on this one. Might as well have been a joint, okay? Sorry, Brenda. I know you come from that kind of background, but I was raised in that kind of background, and I have chosen to be more scientific about that whole business. So anything the Bible says about marriage, I take with a grain of salt. And here's why. Because it was written by men. Old men. Wasn't written at the time of Christ. The New Testament was written hundreds of years after Christ. They had a big meeting. And they decided which books were going to become the Bible and which ones weren't. You know, the book of Thomas was left out. The book of Mary Magdalene was left out. All the different accounts and the whole bit. So, yeah, I'm not really going to believe anything the Bible says about marriage. Okay? Sorry. But that's that. But that whole thing about religion, that's a discussion for another day. Because we've been down this road before and we know you don't want to discuss religion. Okay? And we don't want to get into it. Everybody's entitled to their belief. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Bonnie says, I've been married for 48 years and my marriage has never been the way you are describing. I did not get married for godly reasons either. Okay, yeah. And Bonnie says, we don't have roles. We share whatever's happening. He likes to clean. I like to cook, for example, so we do what we enjoy. Sure you're not gay? Because that's how we work. Yeah, two with it. But I agree with you, Bonnie. It shouldn't be about roles. It should be do whatever your expertise is in, whatever one does better. I mean, Walter cooks better than I do. He also serves me wine better. So I might as well capitalize on his strengths. Simple as that. And Laura says, and that's what makes a great marriage work well and happily. I agree. Religions themselves are a form of social control. Yeah, okay, well, we're not going to go there. Okay, we're not going to get into the whole religious thing here because that just, it'll get everybody frustrated when we start that because we all have very strong beliefs about it one way or another, and I think we'll just leave that. Mel says, but you should believe there's a God. Before I could believe this kind of definition about marriage, but that's okay, of course, for people who believe there's God, nothing against that. Yeah, okay, we're not going there. We have evolved and were brought up by parents who didn't set rules. Yeah, okay, so you had a more liberal upbringing. But anyways, back to marriage. So is it obsolete? Well, maybe in this term, I think marriage is obsolete by the traditional definition of what marriage is. But if you define marriage as a relationship where both parties come to it and make a contractual agreement, whether that contractual agreement is one for economic, legal, or emotional reasons, then that's a marriage. And do I need to have it sanctified by a church? I don't personally, but some people feel more comfortable with that. Again, that's religion. We're not getting into it. So I don't know. I don't think then marriage is obsolete. I just think the definition of marriage that is traditional is obsolete and it needs an upgrade of sorts. It's a partnership. Yeah, that's what B says. Yeah, I think so. ML says a traditional marriage is obsolete. Well, okay, good discussion. But just before we leave, I have to ask Mel a question. Mel, we were watching something on YouTube the other night, a Canadian guy who's married to a Finnish woman, and they live in Finland. And he was showing us what it's different about living in Finland from Canada. And something very curious. Do you have a drying rack in your cupboard over above your sink? Because he said that in Finland, this was very common. Every family had these shelves that had racks built in them that instead of having a draining board like we might have at our homes in Canada, you put wet dishes to drip dry in these racks, which were over top of, they look like your cupboard, like cupboards because they had a cupboard door on them, but I guess they drip down into the sink. Do you have something like that, Mel? I'm just curious because this guy made it sound like everybody in Finland, that's what you do, which that's fine if you do, but I just wondered. Yes, we do. It's really good. I think it's originally Finnish invention. That's really interesting. I did not know that. You learn something new every day. We can't do that. We don't have cupboards over top of our sink. But a different idea. Bonnie says, Laura, yes, my hubby can swing a broom or a vacuum and he likes to scrub floors. I hate that stuff. Would rather so. Oh, I agree with you, Bonnie. That's why we have a cleaning person. Notice I said person. I'm not getting into the whole thing, the fact that she might be a woman. Oh, I like the dishwasher. Oh, yeah. Okay, people, good discussion. So we're off to a sewing retreat this Thursday through to Sunday. We'll probably be on the air next Sunday, and we'll tell you all about the retreat because it's just Walter and I and about 30 or 40 ladies as well. So heaven only knows what kind of trouble we're going to get into, because there could be some,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Our sink is in the middle of the kitchen, and if we splash too hard, well,
Yeah,
it'll wet the floor on the other side.
yeah, it wouldn't work. Yeah, ours is not. Yeah, our sink is not underneath our window. It's kind of
In the middle of the
in
room.
the middle of the room. Well, not really in the middle of the room, but you know what I mean. It's just like there's no cupboards over top of it. It kind of acts as a divider between food preparation area and an eating area. But anyways, so yeah, so next week, sewing retreat. We're looking forward to it. Lots of projects to work on. Have you figured out what you're going to
No,
work on
I
yet?
have no idea.
Okay, well, never mind. I have lots of projects. And there's going to be a special little thing that Walter and I are going to do, and we'll talk about that next week. So, yep, as far as we know, we'll be on at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next Sunday. We'll have just gotten back from the retreat, and so we'll talk to everybody then. So, have a good week.
Yeah.
And we'll talk to you next week, and my vlog is on tomorrow. So, have a good one, people.
Yep. Bye.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
That's not stopping.
How come it's not stopping? Oh, there it is.